Well, hello there and welcome to Digital++. This video is part of a brand new playlist that covers some topics other than Unity. In the previous 8 videos, I built a vendor-agnostic multiplayer VR baseline, and these were all fairly technical tutorials. In this video, however, we're going to take a step back and look more closely into what the user experience and the user journey of our metaverse should look like. So this will not be a technical tutorial, and the content is mostly design focused, but we will do a demo of a proof of concept that I built some time ago. If you like this video, then please subscribe or join my Patreon channel, where you will get access to lots of stuff, like the code, behind the scenes, and even downloading the complete projects. Now, let's roll up our sleeves and get into the weeds. So, let's look at the definition of the metaverse according to Meta, and this comes from the website meta.com. So the metaverse is all about connecting people, and it aims to provide people the feeling of being together in person. There is one aspect of this definition that made implementing the metaverse or any other similar gamer application suddenly infinitely more complicated. It's the fact that it's multiplayer or multi-user. So in previous videos, we've implemented a multiplayer application. That wasn't such a big deal, right? So what's the point? Well, the problem is not so much the technology, but it's all about people meeting and coming together. And how, where, and when do you meet? Right? And how do you make sure that it really feels like you're together in person? Let's not forget about that. So we made a really fun application so far, but it's not like you're there in person yet. So how do we make that happen? And that is why thinking properly about the user experience and the user journey is crucial for the success of whatever you build. It could be a game or a metaverse or a meeting application or something. So the user journey consists of a couple of steps. And don't worry, I'm not going through all of the details of all of these in this video because it would take too long. I'm just going to call out some of the highlights. So first of all, you need to define personas, and note that's not the same as a person. A persona is a role that somebody plays, and people may have different roles. So we'll come back into that a little further. Customer touchpoints capture where people interact with your application. So in our case, that's pretty extensive, right? So then you should create a flowchart, a storyboard, or a flow diagram, or something else that captures the end-to-end experience to visualize the journey phases. And to do it right, you also need to think about what people could think during each of the stages. And then last but not least, you iterate that, you validate, and you go back to the drawing board to see where you need to improve stuff. All right, so let's look into the personas and goals first. Who will be using our application? And what do we want to achieve with our application? So I think for now, the metaverse should have 3 type of personas. As most of you probably will be after the first one, informal or game participants, people that want to play games. Then you can imagine you make an application for businesses. So metaverse is also something that could be used in a business context. And then the third one will be an organizer. And what's so special about an organizer? Well, an organizer is not necessarily attending the game or the meeting, right? So it's somebody who organizes it, but doesn't necessarily participate themselves. So what is the goal for a VR game application or a metaverse? Well, yeah, it could be anything, as per the previous slide, right? So let's split it up in games and business. You can probably identify a couple of goals. Creating games. You could also create content. Think about whiteboards, murals, 3D objects. Create those together. You could also have a direct interaction with someone. And it could be game, but also business-ish, right? So you could meet with somebody and then have just a conversation. And as long as it feels like you're really together, then that could work. More for a business point of view, you maybe want to do presentation of some slides or some video, business cases, whatever, total cost of ownership stuff. You want to present that to the participants. You would have team meetings like strategic planning or, weekly regular team meetings or something, or collaboration meetings. So those could all be goals. And I'm not saying we're going to pick any of those, but just want to make sure that you figure out, yourself, what is it that we're trying to build here? What are you trying to achieve? From a phases point of view, let's have a look there, very high level. So we started our first 8 episodes with building a application. And our application was vendor agnostic. It was multiplayer, it was VR, it was a baseline. It can do audio, but we skipped a whole lot of crucial steps in our journey. So how do people even decide to come together in the first place? And where do you come together? Yeah, you start the application, but where do we host it? So the first step a user usually takes is scheduling and planning. So even an ad hoc multiplayer game, right, like a third-person shooter or so, that will still require some level of scheduling and planning. You can make a deliberate decision. People just drop in the first available gaming room, but then that's a deliberate decision. You can also agree with all your friends to join a game together at Friday 8 p.m. and meet in some dedicated online gaming room, right? But that requires planning. Now, planning and scheduling is a very complex problem, and don't underestimate that. If you're building a game or app, you need to think about how to get what people at what time in what place. Scheduling is always done by a meeting organizer, and that's why I identified that as a persona. The meeting organizer is someone that takes the onus of aligning everybody and all their agendas and ensuring that all the right tools and the right spaces are available. That's no different in the metaverse. That's no different in a game. That's no different in the real world. In the next slides, I'd like to dive deeper into the join experience. So let's park that for a second. And then last but not least, we reach the actual meeting or game, whatever that is. And this is where builders tend to focus most on, right? Here's where people come together and you will need tools and a stage and a scene and everything, right? Or maybe, you have a third-person shooter, so you need to have guns and where do you place them, etc. So you need to set all of that up. So you need a specific scene with a certain layout that exactly matches the purpose of your meeting. How can you identify these 3 phases? Well, if you look at the timing point of view, the scheduling planning usually is T minus a number of days. The join experience is T minus seconds or minutes. And then finally you have the game or meet, which is on T itself. So journey phases, how do we now proceed? Where do we start? Well, fortunately, as long as we're in development mode, we can design and build any of these 3 phases and do, whatever we want, as long as we keep the end-to-end journey on our radar and ensure that together it all makes sense. So some of you already provided me with some great ideas, which you'll see here on the screen, which we can all align to either of these 3 phases. And you see the vast majority of them are in the game meets phase. So for now, let's focus on step number 2, which is the join stage. The schedule, plan, and game meet stages we will cover in future videos about user experience and the journey. What we want to do is we want to make the metaverse feel like you're together in person, and the avatar should be a really close representation of you. And we also want to make the join experience seamless and quick. We could use, for example, AI to automatically generate parts of the avatar. For example, whether or not you're a male or a female, and then could generate an avatar for you. But applying AI on people may, and in the future likely, will have regulatory limitations and constraints. And so let's quickly have a look into what I found so far, which may be of impact of using such a technology on people's images. So there's some AI regulations in progress. The one in the United States is not regulatory, but it is a blueprint of guidelines. It was released October last year by the US White House Office of Science and Technology. So it provides a framework for how people should work together on AI, but it doesn't provide regulatory limitations yet. In the EU, there is an AI Act, and that is due in next calendar year. The first true hard regulations on the use of AI. And so I'll add the links to the documents in the comments so people can have a look. But it's quite a long document. The EU one is over 100 pages. So that's quite a piece of work to get through. And there's no easy to read overview for that information available yet. At least I haven't found it yet. So you could find a lot of information on what's on progress on the World Economic Forum. And so all of that information you could find on their website. And I'll post a link in the comments below as well. Now let's look at the one for the United States, because that's a little bit more easier to read, and there's already some abstract on what this is about. So there's 5 key principles that completes that US AI Bill of Rights. First of all, you should be protected from unsafe or ineffective systems, so that's pretty broad. So that is all about That system should be developed with consultation from diverse communities, stakeholders, etc. And the system should also undergo pre-deployment testing and make sure that they identify the risks and the mitigations and have ongoing monitoring to demonstrate that they're safe and effective. Then people should be protected against algorithmic discrimination. So should also be used and designed in an equitable way. You should be protected from abusive data practices via built-in protections, and you should have agency over how your data is used. And this is about that designers, developers, and deployers of automated systems should seek your permission and respect your decisions regarding collection, use, access, transfer, and deletion of your data in appropriate ways and to the greatest extent possible. Where it's not possible, we should have alternative privacy by design safeguards. Now, systems should not employ user experience and design decisions that obfuscate user choice or burden users with defaults that are privacy invasive. And consent should also be used to justify collection of data where it can be appropriately and meaningfully given. And it talks about consent requests should be brief and understandable, plain language, etc. This one is also important. You should know that an automated system is being used. So as soon as you turn on AI, people should know that and should consent to it, and they should understand how and why it contributes to the outcomes of the application. So people should have always the opportunity to opt out and use an alternative. Right, and talk to a human if necessary. Okay, and then again note that the intent of the blueprint is to help and design, is not necessarily to provide legislation yet. The one in the European Union, on the other hand, is much more strict and is going to be legally enforcing some of these things. Okay, so let's talk about the join experience. What would be the goals? Considering what we've heard so far, you can obviously talk about a number of things that we'd like to achieve, but also need to make sure that there's a couple of things that we have to look into. So we want to store a minimum amount of data and store it only for a very small amount of time so that you don't have the risk of data being lost, etc., etc. So data processing, if we can, let's try to do it local, right? So why pull all people's personal data over the network, centrally manage it? If you can do it all locally on a local user's device and make sure people are aware that the processing is taking place. So let's make sure the avatar shall be me. That has two aspects. The first one, it should be actual. Normally, if you want to have a real experience like you are together, then the avatar should be a close representation of yourself. You also want to do it the other way around. So from a legislation point of view, let's make sure that it is actually me and I can't just pretend I'm somebody else. The next one is, well, the avatar should be me today, so that it's not like me like 10 years ago or something like that. To make it easy, it should be a minimum number of steps, should be really easy, should be seconds to join, but rigid nonetheless, right? And then obviously, last but not least, we want to make sure we comply to AI regulation. Okay, so how could something like that look like? This is not perfect yet. It's going to be just a concept. Probably will need a number of iterations. I'm definitely interested to hear each of your thoughts on how something like that could work, right? So you could start your web app, right? And then a web app can run on your local phone, on your tablet, or on your laptop, for example. You would then want to make a picture of somebody's face, so best use the camera. And then before you could do that, people already need to consent the use of the camera, right? If people opt out of that, okay, fine, then you can stop there. Once you've done that, you want to scan your face using your local device, right? So make sure that the AI, that whatever model we created, is running on their local, on your phone, on your tablet, or on your computer. But nonetheless, before you launch the AI, person needs to consent that we're going to use that. And we need to make sure that people understand what's being done. For example, we're now going to use AI to determine your gender, and we're going to use AI to make a model of your face. The web app could process the data locally. Then it presents the proposed features, like I think you're a male or female. Here's a model of your face. And also, let's not forget that somehow we need to find a way that it confirms its use. So in the mechanism, we need to have something that does that. The user then confirms, or maybe if they don't agree, selects alternatives, or maybe even opt out. And with that, the user then gets a PIN code or a QR code, and the user can basically drop the web app, put on the AR/VR headset, start the app. And then, you get a virtual keyboard, you enter the PIN code, or maybe you have a QR scanner, if that's possible. And then the user joins the scene. And with that, the VR system renders a realistic avatar. And then all the remote participants, because this is still a multiplayer VR experience, will see each other's custom avatar as well. And then last but not least, when that's done, all the data that's supposed to be sent across to all of the participants will be removed from any central storage that we have. So the data should not be stored for example, longer than 15 minutes or so. Okay, so let's quickly look how that would look like. So the user joins on the web app, and the web app will be based out of HTML5, JavaScript, and CSS. It also will have TensorFlow.js so that you can run AI, but it will all be running on your local web app on the local device of the user. So the user consents whether they would like to continue using their camera and whether they want to use okay with using AI to detect certain features. You need to be explicit on what features you're going to pull. For example, in the pre-trained model, we want to figure out if somebody would be a male or a female, which I think is important for us to determine the avatar, but somebody could also determine to be undecided. So you would need to have an avatar for that as well. And people can explicitly make that decision. Maybe things like hair type, and you would like maybe to have a 3D face mesh model of your head. So that trained model data comes together. People will actually scan their face. AI detects features. Then the user is presented with the results of those checks and needs to confirm those, and you need to check them. Then one thing we want to do, based on the information we've seen before on the regulation, I think it's crucial that we need to confirm in some way people's identity. And the reason for that is that it would be then impossible for you to pretend you're somebody else. You would generate your QR code or maybe a PIN code, and that data would be then temporarily stored on the server. And we only want to store it for as long as it takes for all the participants to join the session, maybe 10-15 minutes, and then everything can and should be deleted. What would we then store? Whether or not you're a male or a female, what your hair type is, etc., etc. Well, the idea is maybe we can code that into a PIN code, a 5-digit letter PIN code. And that would contain somehow the information about, your specific features that were detected. And then you would have to have a picture of your face, probably, and the 3D model. So those are the three things we probably want to store on the server. Could be a PHP server in our case. And we would only store it for a certain amount of time, and then data would be deleted. And the user would start the VR application on their VR device. You get a 3D keyboard, you can enter your PIN code, maybe there's a QR scanner, using AR technology. And then in Unity, we're going to generate the avatar, and then the generation will be done via, data being pulled from the server centrally so that the avatar can be generated and make sure that everybody will get to see the same avatar. Once the avatar is generated, you get to the spawn stage. So now you need to have inputs. Okay, what is this? Is this a game? Is this a meeting? Etc. All these kind of things. And then we provide all the features based on the purpose of the meeting. So roughly that would be the process. All right, so we'll now do a quick demo of a proof of concept that I've built already more than a year ago. In general, the proof of concept is really just to show the mechanism of scanning your face using AI and then go to Unity, generate an avatar, how that could work. Again, it's just a proof of concept. We'll go through that and then do a recap afterwards. All right, so I'm now making a picture of my face. So, yeah, we have to look a little bit down. That's capture. And it has now recognized that I am a male, and I can click that here. So if I click change, I can change it to female or undecided or male. And then I can click the submit button. So let's do that. So now you get a PIN code, and you can enter the PIN code in your VR device in the application on Unity. And so let's try that out. So I have opened up the application. I'm using it in USB mode. Please note, this is an older project running on an older version of Unity, and this is also not multiplayer yet, but just to give you an idea, again, this is a proof of concept, right? So let me see, what was the PIN code again that I needed to enter? You see I have an on-screen keyboard, Z to Z and M, and then I do submit. And give it a little bit of try, and there you see. So you see the avatar, see my face on the avatar. So the quality of the picture isn't that great because it's very dark today, but and those are things we'll probably need to fix, but you can see my face on the avatar. And then again, this is a proof of concept, but we'll work on that in our project. So that was the demo of the join experience. If you look into the user journey, the last step would be the validation. So I would like to hear from you what your ideas are about the user journey and how the join process works. Yeah, do you like this approach? Do you think, oh, this is probably wrong? Should do it like this or that? So it would really be good to hear your inputs. So feel free to provide your inputs in the comments below. We can also have an interactive conversation on my Patreon channel. So it's patreon.com/digital++. But maybe this video and demo triggers some new ideas and thoughts. So yeah, please let me know. So the next videos that I'm thinking about is in particular in the join experience. At the moment only have one avatar in our multiplayer VR baseline and it's pretty hard coded. So one of the next videos I'd like to create, so how would you be able to spawn any avatar that we would download from Mixamo or from any other site as long as there's a humanoid bone structure in it. And then one of the other videos I'd like to do is actually starting a new playlist on machine learning and AI with TensorFlow and Python, and that will be a convolutional neural network. And that rolls up this episode of Build a Metaverse. I hope you enjoyed this video. For the hardcore techies, unfortunately, there was no coding this time. But yeah, sometimes you need to get out of your trenches and kind of have a look around and which direction are we going. So I hope from that point of view, this video was insightful. We will definitely have a lot of more coding coming up in next videos. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe or join actively the conversations and get even access to more content in my Patreon channel. So patreon.com/digital++. Really hoping to see you there and support me in building more of these videos. Thanks very much and speak to you later. Bye bye.